Hey friends, welcome to another week of Between the Lanes, our new podcast. If you've joined us before, thanks for coming back. If you're new, we want to tell you a little bit about the reason and purpose for our podcast. This is really intended to be a conversation between me, Todd Lane, my dad, Tom Lane, and really the goal that we're trying to achieve here is to help every person who's a follower of Jesus become a leader for his kingdom. And what we know in that is that there's a variety of roles that we occupy in our world. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm an employee, I'm a minister. I'm a lot of different things, and those various roles have me navigating between multiple different lanes. And so we're going to navigate between those lanes as we have a conversation between the lanes. So thanks for being with us. We're really brought to you by the Executive Leadership Institute. We want to tell you just a little bit about that. ELI, Dad, talk real quick about the purpose behind ELI.
Yeah, the Executive Leadership Institute is designed to strengthen existing leaders and to impart into emerging leaders the skills and the heart that is needed for leading in today's environment, whether it's in business or in ministry. When we say we're developing kingdom leaders, what we really mean by that is there's a purpose that God has on all of our life. Whether you're in vocational ministry or you're in a secular job, God has a plan and a purpose for you, and maybe even has gone to extensive lengths to set you in the position that you're in order to be an influence for him. We want to help you be effective in that.
So question, is the Executive Leadership Institute targeting only people who are or want to be executives?
We're targeting all individuals at whatever level they are in their development. They're a leader in their home. They're a leader in their community. There are multiple expressions of leading. A person might look at us and say, well, I guess this isn't for me because I'm not a leader.
Or I'm not an executive leader.
Not an executive leader. And the reality is you are an executive leader for something. You're the executive leader of your home. You're the executive leader maybe in your neighborhood.
Of your life.
Of your life, yes. And so we are desiring not just to impart principles, because there's a lot of executive leadership material that talks about how you lead and what leading is. Those are important, and they're skills that we need to develop. But what we're really focusing on is the foundational things, the principles that we believe are God-given and impact our leadership at whatever place we are, in our family, in our home, our neighborhood, with our children, in our businesses, or in our vocational ministry, if that's the cause.
Our overarching verse to highlight what we do at ELI is Psalm 78:72, which says, David shepherded them with the integrity of his heart and the skillfulness of his hands. And so that verse incorporates itself and its application into all of our lives. If I'm a parent, I want the integrity of my heart to be reflected in how I parent. If I'm a business leader, I want the integrity of my heart to be reflected in how I lead a team or lead the people that are under my oversight. If I'm a business owner, the business that I have, the customers that I'm impacting, I want the integrity of my heart to be reflected in that. I think that's what you mean when you talk about the why. Leadership in general is leadership development is seeking to develop the acumen that's required in leadership and business. And we're going to talk about those things, but we're also going to talk about it from the why and the integrity of the heart.
That verse talks about David, and I just think it's interesting. David was a shepherd boy. He was the youngest of a string of brothers, and because he was the youngest, he really wasn't thought of in a leadership capacity. And yet when God went to look for a king of Israel, he selected David and put him in charge because, as the verse says, because of the integrity of his heart. His leadership flowed from that. Yeah. And so I think that this is an element, a part of what we do. It's not just giving you the skills. You can get that in a lot of places, but we want to impart the heart value behind all of that.
One last thing to clarify about executive leadership. I just want you to know executive is only intended to mean executing. All right. So if you're leading any way to get something accomplished, you have to execute well. And so executive doesn't mean a title, doesn't mean a level in an organization. It's our ability in our role as a leader to execute and make things happen. So hopefully that gives you the context for ELI. We're gonna hit on a number of topics. Today, it's going to be a dialogue between the two of us. There are other times we're going to have guests, and we'll dive into different topics. And so topic for today, Dad, is discipline. All right? So now listen, before you start yawning, I want you to know discipline is a great thing and actually will significantly impact your future. But it's understanding discipline from the two definitions that we want to hit on today. You have discipline, which is correction, it's training, it's learning from past experiences, and that's discipline. God disciplines us, parents, others discipline us, and then there's discipline that's based on habit or routine, and that kind of training. Talk about either one of those first. Where do you go to when your mind goes to discipline? Because I know you are a disciplined person. Now, I have been disciplined by you as well. So I've been disciplined by you, and I know you are a disciplined person. So talk about your perspective about discipline.
Well, okay. So my first thought is discipline as a means of correction. Why do we discipline? Well, if we only think of discipline as punishment, I discipline to punish. You made me mad, you embarrassed me, and so therefore I'm going to punish you. It's not redemptive in its purpose. But if you think of discipline as a correction that is redemptive, you didn't do what you were supposed to do, and I'm going to correct you in this. I'm going to discipline you for the work. What we always did as parents, we said we discipline for disobedience, not for actions. So if we were if we were telling you, if we gave you a command, when you were little and had friends over, hey, I want you to settle down. Well, you might be engaged in the moment and yeah, but you were off playing. So we would engage. Hey, come here. Well, look at my eyes. You're being too noisy. You're being too rowdy. Somebody's going to get hurt. Stop. And because we've made that connection, if then you didn't do that, you chose to disobey. And that disobedience would have a consequence. That's the discipline that is redemptive. Well, the concept of that is important. If I'm a parent, it's important to infuse into the children because God is a disciplining God. And Hebrews tells us that he loves those that he disciplines. And so if you think about, well, wait a minute, I'm an adult. How does God discipline me? I'll give you an example. I was trying to infuse this principle into our third child, your siblings,
Yep.
4 of you.
All of which were disciplined much more than me.
So you say. But I noticed one day, Tyler, our third child, second son, he was coming home and he had an attitude toward authority. He was just railing on the teachers in school. He was railing on coaches. He would talk about a principle, a rule, and he just was upset by it. And I started thinking, I think maybe God is dealing with him on an issue of authority. And so I said, hey, Tyler, he's 16 years old. I said, hey, Tyler, do you have a problem with authority? No, I don't have a problem with authority, like all kids do with an attitude. And I said, I think maybe you do, and I'm just telling you, can I help you? You want to talk about the issue of authority in your life? No, I don't want to. Well, okay, you need to deal with this, because if you don't deal with it, what God is trying to do is get your attention to get you to deal with this. And if you don't deal with it, he'll raise the stakes. Oh, yeah, right, Dad. Yeah, sure. I mean,
Did he look like that? I just
Well-
want to know. Like, we're gonna have him on the podcast at some point. We're gonna get his side of the story.
Okay.
I want to get him to actually say exactly the way you're saying that he said it.
sometimes attitudes are reflected in,
yes,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
very
that
true.
was his attitude.
That was the attitude, gotcha, yeah.
that I felt. So I said, okay, I'm not going to control him. I'm just pointing out to him there could be a consequence to this. And so a few days later, I'm on my way home from work, about to pull into our neighborhood, and I look across the street from for where I was going to turn in, and there's a police car with 2 cars in front of him. The lead car was Tyler's.
Hey, at least he was leading.
Yeah, he was leading for sure. And so rather than pull into the neighborhood, I pull around and pull in front of his car, and I get out and walk back. And as I do, he just does, he goes like this. He slides down in the seat, and I lean over and I said, "Hey, T, what's up?" And before he said anything, the police officer arrived, and he said, "Oh, you must be Dad." And I said, "Yes, sir, I am. And I see you have some unfinished work here. I'll let you carry on." I looked at Tyler and I said, "See you at home."
And at that point, his heart sank.
And it was a tangible example that God has a way of dealing with the attitudes and the misbehavior of our life. And I may not be with you. It may not be a spanking in the traditional sense, but God will deal with the nature of your heart in the principles that he's trying to deal with. And I can tell you as an adult today, that still remains true. You pass on these concepts of punishment, of correction, and correction has a consequence. And it's not because God hates us, he's mad at us. Just like as a loving parent, I don't discipline out of retribution. I discipline for correction. And the pain of the discipline is to reinforce, oh, yeah, I remember that. I don't want to do that again. And it steers me in the right direction.
And really thinking about intimacy with the Lord, I believe his discipline is because he wants greater intimacy with us. And so his discipline, why does God discipline? Well, there's issues in our heart and character issues he wants to address. And it's because the issues that we're dealing with are causing separation from him, and he wants that intimacy. So why does God discipline us? For greater intimacy with him.
True.
And you've said this before, and I love this picture, but it's when God disciplines us, he starts very privately, and he works in our hearts. He confronts us directly. It's a conviction of the Holy Spirit that might just be at work. And so he's starting in a very close inner circle that starts with self. And then if you don't begin to address it, he widens the circle.
It's concentric circles.
Concentric circles. He'll bring in maybe loved ones or someone who notices something I want to confront. And you have an opportunity to respond at that point. Again, to the point, it's never, God's way of discipline isn't punitive. It's redemptive. It's restorative. And at any one of those points, you have an opportunity. And I think usually we see people who have maybe had a giant fall, and it's like, man, how did that happen? Well, there were probably moments, several concentric circles along the way where they could have repented, could have changed their mind, turned their hearts, and it wouldn't have had to gone that way.
Absolutely. Accountability is our friend.
Yeah.
Being under authority means a lot to us in these situations. And so understanding, I really think if we fully understood this, so we might say, okay, yeah, I grew up in a home where my parents spanked me and I got corrected for misbehavior. Okay, if you really understood the concept of discipline, then you'd understand that when your boss, when things are being resistive in your life because you get stopped for multiple moving violations in your car, and you can think, man, they're just picking on me. Maybe, or maybe it could be God trying to get your attention on something as an adult that you never understand. It's a principle that God is trying to work into your life to correct. Or you have a boss and you think, this boss just hates me. And you don't realize that no matter who your employer is, that you're ultimately employed by the God of the universe, and he's working in your life, and he's using your employer to extract or exert discipline into your life. And as long as you fight it, you're not fighting your employer. And man, I lost another job. I can't believe what happened to me. It's just not fair. No, you're resisting God, and where you go, the next place, it'll repeat itself, because you're not just resisting an employer, you're resisting God himself.
So I think one of the things, I'm thinking about, we're launching this podcast. We're in the first few episodes and we're talking about discipline. Why is this important at this stage? Why are we talking about this? Well, because it really is connected to a bigger principle, and it's about authority. Who is our authority? And how does God, in working in our lives, exercise his authority? And it comes at times through discipline that's motivating us to go deeper in relationship with him, to grow as a disciple. None of us are perfect. In fact, whenever we got saved, it's very unlikely you were discipled and then got saved. Right? You probably were saved out of some, dramatic moment and sin in our lives, and God encountered us, got saved. Well, the discipleship really begins at that point. And so that process of discipleship is where the testing, the training, the discipline that the Lord brings our way actually helps to grow in intimacy with him. And in that, we're learning who the ultimate authority is. It isn't the boss we have. It isn't the relationships in our life who are truly leading and guiding us. It's under the providence of the Heavenly Father, and understanding his authority in our life affects how we see how he disciplines us.
Yeah. My dad told me a story one time that really impacted me. He had a man in business that he called his mentor. He was a man, I knew this man. I'd met him several times. He was conversation around our dinner table, because my dad would say, Ned told me so-and-so. Ned Reynolds was his mentor. And my dad trusted this man to the point that if Ned said, I don't want you to do that, my dad said, okay, I won't do that. So he was in the same business as my dad, so we're the same company. And my dad at the time was the sales manager. It was a wholesale paper distribution company that he ultimately ended up owning. But he was the sales manager. So he went into Ned, his boss, one day and said that he was going to take one of the sales guys out to make a call. He'd be gone all afternoon. Ned said, okay, that's great. Well, they didn't go to make the call. They decided to go to the horse races. And so they went to the race, and about 4:30 or so, they decided, well, we better get back and check into the office. And as they're leaving the track, they're involved in an accident in a company vehicle.
Oh.
So my dad has to go back to his mentor and boss and tell him, I wasn't where I told you I'd be. And what happened. Yeah. And his mentor said, Jim, why didn't you tell me what you were doing? He said, if you would have told me, I could cover what happened with you. Now you've made it much more difficult for me because I didn't know. You didn't tell me the truth. And my dad was telling me the story to tell me accountability and authority is your friend. And it's designed to provide protective covering. And I mean, that story etched something in my mind. I want to be a person who understands authority, who lives under authority. I want to be honest and declare what I'm doing. I don't want to be one of those people who asks forgiveness rather than asking permission.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about discipline as a form of correction. And like I said, I experienced your form of discipline on me growing up, and I think it's made me the man I am today. I would also like to say, however, I think I made you the man you are today. I shaped you through the trials that I put you through, the testing, the perseverance as a parent, and I helped you hone and shape your strong parenting abilities. So you're welcome.
Yes, but you were never a rebellious problem child. There was some foolishness in there that discipline had to
work its way out.
I
don't think you got it all out. I think Belinda would say it rears its ugly head every once in a while still. But having covered that side of discipline, let's cover the side of discipline that I really am able to watch in your life. The discipline of correction, I got up to a certain point and then that transitioned. The discipline of habit, routine, the importance of rhythm in our relationship with God, relationship with people, is the side that I've really watched in you. And I think anybody who knows you, there's some deep inside jokes about the kind of ruts that you have and how deep they run. And if you ever see my dad at a restaurant, you will probably see him with his own jar of salad dressing. He brings it with him. He's so routine, he's so disciplined in his habits that he doesn't want to trust any restaurant's salad dressing. He's going to have his own, and it's going to create a level of consistency. No matter what the salad is, he knows he's going to have a salad dressing on there he's going to like. That's what you call routine. And I'm going to, so you using that, I mean, I love it. There's other examples that we'll probably get into in other podcasts, but talk about how, has that always been your life that you were that disciplined, habitual, and talk about that from the relationship with the Lord, how that's just reflected in every area of your life.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a question I should ask my mom. She's still alive at 93. Hey, Mom, did you notice certain discipline characteristics in my life growing up? So when I got saved, one of the first things that I thought about is I want to be consistent in my relationship with God. I want to be, and how do I do that? Right. And so I started asking those kind of questions. I need to build a routine that produces the same results. So it has to do with order and processes that began to develop in order to produce the result that I was looking for. I was meditating in Proverbs one day, and there's a passage in Proverbs that says this, the slothful man doesn't roast his prey, but the precious possession of a man is diligence. And I thought, what a strange verse.
Strange collection of words.
Yeah. The slothful man doesn't roast his prey. Who wouldn't roast his prey? I mean, but as I meditated on this verse, this is what sort of unfolded to me is, in a day when you couldn't go down to the local grocery store and buy everything that you wanted to eat and take it home and cook it, you had to wake up in the morning thinking, what do I feel hungry for today? Is it possum or rabbit or
rabbit? Wow, both of them.
Yeah, I mean, and am I going to trap it? Am I going to shoot it? How am I going to get this food? And then you had to go out and actually do it. And your effort to get the food might take you all day. And so you start out and you're hungry, and you get hungrier throughout the day. And when you finally get whatever you're after, then you field dress it, and you just can't wait. You can't wait and get home and cook it. You just start. You rip off a big piece of meat and start chewing away. Yeah. And that proverb says that's slothful. The process of slothfulness is you don't completely do all the steps that lead to the result that you want. And I thought, wow,
yeah,
I get that.
Yeah. Which ways do I like to cut corners or enjoy delayed gratification? I don't enjoy that. I want it now, so I don't delay things. And I think about that from the standpoint of our relationship with the Lord, that the process of discipling and maturing is a process. And sometimes people want to avoid that process of what it is to grow in the Lord. And I think that's sometimes reflected in maybe a platform that people want or people get, and they haven't been tested and tried through the process of discipleship. And that may lead to I'll just say, character in their life that can't sustain the platform they have.
Yep.
And that process, that diligence of working things out with the Lord and letting Him work things in us is part of the process of discipleship that actually is a necessary part of maturing.
This aspect of discipline, I would maybe define this way. Discipline in this sense is doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason. So, sometimes we're driven by feelings, and I don't feel like doing it today, so I'm not going to make myself do it today. Yeah. So it's doing the right thing for the right reason at the right time. Yeah. And that pushes by the emotions that I feel. I don't feel like doing that. And it then is a process, or it's saying, I'm going to do the right thing for the right reason, but not at the right time. Yep. Then no, you're missing a step of diligence, which produces discipline. Yep. and the fruitfulness that you
and really what you're talking about there in discipline, what you're really you are not motivated day in, day out by the outcome you see day in, day out. The outcome may not be produced for weeks, months on end, but you're still diligent in the daily exercise of what you're doing. So talk about that, because if you don't know, one of the other routines that my dad is known for is he meets with the Lord every day at McDonald's. And most people who know you know this. You've written, a whole journal on it that Gateway released, and a whole thing. And so that began for a certain reason. You didn't just decide, I love, sausage McMuffins. Yep. So I'm going to go and enjoy that with the Lord every morning. There was a reason for that. That developed into a discipline. So talk about that, but also in that talk about, do you see every day with that level of diligence, do you see daily revelation? Yep. Does God come down and meet you and the Shekinah glory falls at McDonald's? Or what does that discipline produce in you?
Yeah, so that whole thing started when I was trying to establish a discipline of reading the Bible and what we would call a quiet time with God. I want to meet with God every day. How do I do that? And what I found is, if I got up and went into the living room of our house, sat down in a nice comfy chair, it wouldn't be very long before I was nodding off back to sleep, or, so.
Gosh, I think everyone feels so much better knowing that is a temptation that you also fell into, because I think most everybody understands the nodding off possibility.
I'd begin reading a passage of Scripture, and I'd have to read that same passage 2 or 3 times because I wasn't concentrating. My eyes were heavy.
You're like, I'm really meditating on this. Good night.
Yeah. And so I decided I needed to go someplace. Yep. And eventually I started at the International House of Pancakes.
Hello.
Because they were open 24 hours, and I could go there. But the problem is, when I started traveling, they weren't convenient. If they were in every city.
As international as they claim?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, but McDonald's was. I could go to just about any city, and there's a McDonald's. Mm-hmm. Even any country, there's a McDonald's. And so I would, and I found most of them are open early in the morning, so I could go early in the morning, and depending on how early I went, I might be, other than the kitchen staff, it'd be the kitchen staff and me, and I'd have plenty of privacy. And that's how I established a routine.
Were you ever waiting at the door for them to open?
Many times. Many times. And I got to be, the side benefit is I really got to be an expert on McDonald's. I can walk into a McDonald's and tell you if the place is run well or not.
I bet you can.
Because I've observed many, and I know how they function. Just because I've been there, that wasn't my purpose, but
have you also? Let's get to the deeper thing here in just a second. Have you also ever been customer of the month?
Yes, I have.
Oh, I know. I came home from college one time and was at a McDonald's and standing there in line, and I'm looking, they're ringing me up, whatever. I look on the wall, and it's like, oh, hey, look, employee of the month. I'm like, oh, that's sweet. Customer of the month. And there's Dad sitting there in his hat at his table. I'm like, yes. And that was when I was, in college. So that was some 30 years ago. You were already customer of the month then. I'm waiting for the award to come. Maybe this podcast will cause it'll go viral and you'll get something from it.
Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody, all the people watching, that was a proud moment, was it not?
That was a proud moment. I'm talking about it now, 30 years later. Yeah. It was a very proud moment. Yes. So go back to the more deeper thing that you found in that routine of, okay, I got away from the kids. By the way, that didn't pass on me that not only would you nod off, but there's probably people that are watching are like, as soon as it never fails, I get up and get going, and then my kids wake up, and they woke up early, and then my quiet time's gone. And so basically you had to avoid us.
Yeah, well,
to go meet with the Lord. Is that what you're saying?
The noise, I wasn't trying to be noisy, but the activity of the house would wake up the house, and then the day was off and rolling, and the time was, to me, compromised. Yep. So I had to get away. And my time at McDonald's was Bible reading, writing in my journal. So I found an app or a booklet that would teach me how to read through the Bible in a year. So I had a discipline of process there. I would pick a verse out of my reading that day that seemed to speak to me, and that would launch me into my journaling. And my journaling would be a prayer. It wasn't a diary. It wasn't, dear God, it was a life-giving expression of my relationship with God and what I felt that He was speaking to me that day. Well, your question that you had asked earlier is, every day, is it just the
angels show up? So
yeah. And I explain it this way. In a day before there were cell phones, when the only thing you had was a landline, I heard a guy describe this, and I thought, this really describes the discipline of my time with God. He said, prayer is like working for the phone company. Some days you dig holes, some days you plant poles, some days you string wire, but some days you connect. And the discipline of reading the Word, writing in prayer, carrying a burden before God, asking Him the questions of your heart. Every day do I walk away going, oh man, this was amazing. God just downloaded. No. There's an element that is simply discipline. I met with God today. Yeah. And I love Him. I love His Word. I love its impact on my life. But there are those days when there is an open heaven and a download that there's unmistakably God is speaking to me, and this is what He said. Yeah. And you kids in various ways have had the beneficiary of that, because part of my prayer was for you kids, concerns over my family, over my kids, over issues in their life. And as God spoke to me, then I had something to say to you. Yeah.
It's interesting when you think about it, because probably one of the biggest struggles I think believers talk about is having a consistent quiet time. And yet anybody who has, of course, on social media, you can see maybe somebody has experienced this himself, like a physical transformation. Either they lost a lot of weight or they bulked up, got a lot of muscle, and you see this evolution of their physical transformation, and they document it as it goes, and you see it. It's like, it's amazing. Well, day 1, day 2, day 3, you're not seeing anything, and then a week goes by, and there's a little bit, and then 2 weeks, and then a month, and it's like, wow. That's what's happening in our spirit, man.
Yeah, it's true.
Through the daily discipline spiritually. And just like everything we know life to be is we're in a spiritual battle, and it's no surprise that that spiritual battle keeps us focused on other things and not on the building up of our spirit man, that the daily routine and discipline is what builds that. And then there's moments where it's like, wow, going back to the image of a big weight loss, it's like, wow, all of a sudden that person, I didn't know it, but they lost 20 pounds, or boom, that person suddenly went from having one ab to having 6. Wow. And you see that development of a person and you go, wow, why do I not think that's going to happen to me in the daily discipline? And I think that's what I've been encouraged over the years in my own walk, but as I was inspired by you in watching something that was like, you were determined to not let the distractions be an excuse to prohibit you from spending time with the Lord. And so what has become a fun thing for us to joke about your routine at McDonald's is actually a perfect picture of an intentional pursuit of the Lord, and to eliminate. Now, what's odd is most people think you're not distracted at McDonald's. I mean, that's some of the most distracted I could ever be, is sitting at McDonald's and different people that come in, but you found that for you. And I think the encouragement to anybody watching would be, what is that for you? What are the things that are distracting you?
Yeah.
That you can then work on your spirit man. And through that discipline, you will develop into the kind of leader for the kingdom, a leader in your organization. That process of building yourself up is going to change your life.
Yeah. So if I turn this into a principle, I would say this: you need a dedicated time. There's no required time that it could be. If you're a night person, it could be at night before you go to bed rather than early in the morning, but you need a dedicated time. You need a dedicated place, and you need some kind of system that makes it replicable. And if you have, it's my experience, if you have those three things, then you will see consistency. And going back, as you were talking just a minute ago, I was thinking, so imagine that you haven't worked out and you get this passion. Somebody talks to you about the fact that you need to exercise to get healthy. And so you go to the gym and you begin working with the machines, and you don't ease into the process. You just do, 50 sit-ups and, 50 push-ups and crunches, and you're doing things. And then the next day you cannot move. And then you go 3 weeks while your body, stops hurting before you go to the gym again. Yeah. That inconsistency won't produce what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what you have to do is you have to commit to something and make it a priority, and that means you might have to change some things in your life. So one of the things I had to do is I had to say, look, if I'm going to get up early and have my quiet time, I have to go to bed at a set time. And
now you're starting to meddle.
Well, and all of you kids know, and grandkids, if you're at our house, Mimi's the one who stays up late, but Papa, about 9 o'clock, 9:30 max, it's like, hey, everybody, good to see you. I'm going to bed. And you don't.
And you're unapologetic about that. And it's because you have prioritized to be up early, having a quiet time with the Lord. And that's been inspiring for us all these years. So sort of as we wind down and thinking about the application of this between multiple lanes, what would be a summary for you? You sort of gave some final talking points, but talk to the parent or the leader. Apply this across multiple lanes of the importance of discipline and correction and the discipline of habit and routine.
Yeah. If you're a parent, I would say the significance of discipline, taking discipline of your children out of the realm of I'm disciplining you because you made me mad, or you embarrassed me, or those won't have productive results. They can be punitive. You'll create fear in your kids. But if you say to them, we discipline, I'm disciplining you because of disobedience. And so whenever we would discipline you, the first thing we would ask is, do you know why you're getting disciplined? And the the thing that was kind of cute is, no. Oh, okay, well, now you're going to get 2 times discipline. Oh, no, wait. I remember now. It's, and the idea is it's not going to have its productive result if you don't know why you're disciplined. And so I told you to stop. You didn't stop. You chose to not obey. And because of that, you're being disciplined. And the connective point with that is God, who loves us, he's going to speak to you, and he's going to expect you to obey. And if you don't obey, there will be consequences. Yeah. You're going to leave my house one day, but you need to know. And so the process of discipline is a process that I feel sorry for families who have embraced the idea that it's not, your kids need to be kids. You don't need to discipline them. No, the rod of correction, your discipline, consequences will train them and will have fruitfulness into their adult years. So that's really important. Then the other thing I would say is the discipline of routine, the understanding that I do the right thing for the right reasons at the right time is a critical concept for our personal success. And that's another thing that we talked about this in an earlier podcast, but I believe in the principle of transference. So if you don't have and aren't working to develop discipline in your own life, doing the right thing for the right reason at the right time, you cannot ask your kids to do it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I hope out of this you have found your lane. Whatever lane you are in today, wherever your struggle or where you're seeking to grow and develop, that there's something today you've been inspired by, and you can find motivation to grow and develop and become a leader in his kingdom. Dad, why don't you pray us out?
All right. Lord, we thank you that you are a loving Father, that you love us, and because you do, you discipline us, and you teach us how to be consistent in the qualities of character and integrity that you have determined are best for life. And so I just pray for those today that are needing a system, a process, they're needing work in the discipline of life. Would you guide and direct them and reveal yourself to them in this powerful way? Lord, whether it's the lane of their family, whether it's the lane of their business or career, or in community influence, teach us, every one of us, how to be influential for you and discipline our life. In Jesus' name, amen.